Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of the FuReel Podcast, and we're back. So here, always with me is Sifu Gawain, master and founder of Jhung Academy, and aka my Faja. I'm going to introduce myself, otherwise you'll take too long. My name is Jhung, and I'm a senior instructor at the Jhung Academy. On the podcast, we talk about what we experienced whilst we're practicing and teaching Kung Fu and Tai Chi, and how it benefits our lives, and the three parts that make us whole: mind, body, spirit. In this episode, we've got two senior members of the Jhung Academy, and senior not being age, but of their experience. I'm just going to call them by how I know them, and then you guys can get to know them on the podcast. So we've got Dai Sihing Rob here and Sihing Brian. And I was thinking today, if we were to add up all our years on this screen, it'll be like a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess Dai Sihing and Sihing Brian, if you heard the podcast before, do you feel like doing a little intro about yourself so the listeners know who they're hearing today?
Sure, I'll go first. Well, my name's Rob, and I've been practicing Kung Fu for 20 years this year. I started with a friend of mine at his request, actually. He asked if I could join him at a free intro class at this place because he wanted to do some martial arts, and being a uni student and on holidays, I didn't have anything to do, so I went down with him. And we joined up on the spot and trained every day since. So that's the history. Yeah.
Cool. I didn't really know that, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, Sihing Brian.
So I've been associated with the school since early '96. Trained at Elder Street up until 2006, sometime later in the year after we moved from Elder Street to Jolimont. Left just the demands of a family, young children. I was away from the school for a period of time and returned about 3 years ago to recommence my training. Prior to leaving the school, I'd completed 2 trips to China, demonstration team. One of the trips to China was a Wushu Games training instructor course. That was 3 years at the end of my 3rd year of training instructor. So I recommenced that when I got back to after I graded recently. So it's really been associated with the school for 24 years, but trained for probably 13 of that.
Yeah, I forget that you guys have done a lot of what I remember training, performing. That's what I used to watch a lot, and even trips to China. Did you guys do the same trip together? I don't actually remember. It was 2 different trips.
Yeah, I went in 2003, and I think, Sihing Brian, you were probably, 01?
I think 2000 there was only about 7 or 8 of us, to just a Shaolin and scenic tour, and 2001 was Wushu Games.
Yeah.
I've been trying to find some footage and photos today, and now that you remind me, Sihing Brian, there was the 2000. There was only 7 of us, and I remember distinctly being at Shaolin and wondering why there was no hot water in the middle of winter. That was horrible.
It was. I can remember that trip, or at least the Shaolin Temple Hotel. I think they gave themselves 2 stars. I think that was being kind to themselves. Walking down towards your room and the wallpaper was peeling off the walls because of whatever. Being able to put a bottle of, I think we had a bottle of beer or something, Chinese beer, that we put inside the hotel room at the back door, and in the morning it froze. Literally froze. It was that cold in the room, so the heating wasn't working too well. So yeah, it was many memories on that. Many good memories from that trip.
Yeah, we were
Yes,
pretty happy. We went in, I think we went in August or September, so it wasn't quite as cold when we went. But we almost didn't go seafood, so it's pretty relevant actually, because 2003 was when SARS was around, and early on in the year we got the news that, because we were traveling for the same reason in 2001, I think, St. Brian, we were going for the international games, we were going to compete, and then we got word that it was cancelled because of SARS, which in my opinion I think is probably the best result, because we got to perform with the monks while we were there, which was something that we just kind of, well, seafood negotiated and made happen. But yeah, it was a bit more pleasant. We were out in the sunshine, and yeah, those little things about the hotel weren't as obvious, I don't think.
Did they still have the dance floor, the fluoro dance floor on second floor, whatever it was?
They did. Yeah, it was there. I think we might have actually been so it was clear when we got there that it was going to come down and they were going to do something else or improve it or something. So there was no money. Obviously, no money had been put into it. I don't think there was any plans to do anything because, I don't know, improvements down the track possibly. But that dance floor was there. All the lights were off and there was definitely nothing happening. There was no one else in the place. It was just us. So.
So this is quite timely because what I'll do is I'll share with you all this photo.
Look at that.
Yeah. So this is your tour, Daisy.
Yeah.
See the monks there,
Just see my
Jhung.
head. Just see my head right at the back.
Yeah, right
Yeah,
back
that's
there.
it. Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's the group.
So young. Look at that.
Yeah. Pretty amazing, isn't it?
Mm.
So who we got? Let's see. We got Chris Albert, front row.
Yeah.
Aaron, Sihing Aaron, is that right? Sihing Aaron?
Aaron Coulter, was it? Coulter?
No, not Coulter. Sihing Aaron. Aaron Coulter only got the brown belt, and he was a big stocky guy. I think he was in security or policing or something. Seeing Luke Harrison, is that right?
Luke Harrison.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then
Cassie
Cassie
Lynch. Seeing Matt
CJ
Spartan
Cassie.
behind her.
Yeah, then yourself.
Yeah.
Paul Newman.
Paul Newman.
Great name.
Yeah.
Love the name. Paul Newman.
CJ
There's CJ Mads.
Oh yeah, well, CJ Mads next to him.
Yeah.
CJ Karen.
CJ Clare. Yeah, CJ Karen. And who's the gent on the far? Daniel Guppy. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that name.
Awesome.
Mm.
Awesome. And you and CJ were a couple then, were you? By that point?
Yeah. So I think we got together in 2002.
Right.
Mm.
Amazing.
Actually, when we were doing the Royal Show, so when we were doing the 110 metre dragon at the Royal Show,
yeah,
in 2002.
Oh, I remember that.
Mm. Yeah.
Oh, that's when you guys officially became a couple.
That's right.
Wow.
Only 7-8 short years later, we got married.
And now two kids and a very large dog. Well, soon to be very large dog.
Yeah. Well, I think she's there if you ask others. 40 kilos, not bad.
Yeah.
Few to go.
Yeah. And seeing Brian, I remember the first trip you sold your drum kit. Is that right? To go?
That's right. Yeah.
Because that was a big trip.
Yeah, that was. I remember at the time, it was a pretty impressive drum kit, and I've drummed since I was 14 off and on and gone through a few kits here and there. And sold them for various reasons along the way, and that one was definitely worth it because that was, as I say, that trip was so many years ago now, but the memories are pretty firm. I can remember most aspects of that journey and the experiences. I was even talking recently about. I was even talking about earlier about. I think the discussion was around coronavirus in China and the concerns about China in the future and traveling there. And I said, look, anyway, we got into a discussion around that. But I said I can remember the trip to China. It's quite a cultural experience. Not even just training at the with the temple with the monks, but the Summer Palace and the Forbidden City and the Great Wall, and even just experiencing the locals in the rural communities, the big cities of Beijing, and what is culturally acceptable there that wouldn't be so much here in the restaurants in particular. So yeah, no, but a very good trip. Well worth selling the drum kit at the time.
It was the very first as well. It was the inaugural culture exchange tour. That was the very first one. I mean, prior to that, 86, we had the first trip to the Shaolin Temple, but we didn't have a relationship with them until 99, and then our first trip was 2000. Our first official trip.
And the first trip, that's where was that where the basketball rivalry started?
Yes, the basketball rivalry.
when I tell people every now and again that I've played basketball against the Shaolin monks, one loss, one win, they can't believe me.
No,
but I've got some photos to prove it.
Cool. I came across this video, which I'll show. Let's see.
Oh,
Yes.
Is that on YouTube? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, there was Albert.
Yeah.
And Seeking Rory.
I think Albert reminds me of Brendan from Dashing Sun.
I remember this being a super long demo.
Oh yeah, it does go on for.
You can only really appreciate how physically taxing these things are after you do them. But then I just remember thinking this was so long. This was a long one.
Did you do it, Dashing, as well, or no?
Not this particular one.
Yeah.
We did our fair share of long ones. But yeah, this was a good one.
I think this trip, Sifu, didn't we? They gave some award to the school, I think, for the demonstrations.
Yes, we did. We did get a special award for our demonstrations. Right. Yeah.
With the splits.
If I tried that now, Ging, I'd probably be hospitalised with severely torn muscles and hamstring and all sorts of things. The days of flexibility.
Yeah.
And hair.
So good.
I remember it was possibly the August Moon before you guys went to that. There was a fashion show where
yes,
Yes.
Where I think the kit that you and Roy are wearing there, you guys might have wandered out on stage
Oh,
down the
wow.
catwalk,
Really?
with those on, and there was it's like we got video because I can do it. And there was a little move. There was a little move that's gone down in history, where you both have popped out a chart sound. For those listening, this little chart sound comes out with the flex of the guns, and then as the turn to then go back down the catwalk was just done again. And that move has been in the repertoire since that night. Anytime there's any need for a flex, it's just the little chart sound. So it's got far-reaching. It has reached far and wide, that little move, Brian.
Wow. I actually, in reflecting on that, I thought it was just my wife, because Val was up there. I know she was modelling, and but now you mention it, yes, I do recall getting the the chart. Maybe I put that somewhere dark and deep in my subconscious. But
it deserves pride of place in Woodwood, if you ask me.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
So good.
that I do remember that night actually. What the restaurant was, the one that Francis Street,
Yes.
the one down near the corner of Francis and William. It's now, of course, changed hand many times. It's still a Chinese restaurant now, but it was that one, and we had those annual events. I think at some point, didn't we have like 3 events a year? There was Chinese New Year, August Moon, and either Christmas, maybe the Christmas gathering.
The August Moon ones at the Golden Swan. Is that the ones? They're the ones I remember. Big parties, big demos.
Yeah,
Golden Swan.
We've had Golden Swan was quite a lot. I think our very, very first one here in Perth was at the Peony Garden restaurant, which is now not that, but it was corner of Lake and James, opposite now that big open piazza area. There's a restaurant or something right on the corner, or a pub. What's it called? Opposite there.
It was Valentino's, but that wasn't on the diagonal. That was it used to be a blue building. Was it on the diagonal?
No, it was. I think the fundamental part of the building's still there, where it's actually elevated, and you have to walk up the stairs to get to the building. It literally is on that corner. Well, anyway,
on the west.
That was our first
northwestern corner, next to Time Zone.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, next to Time Zone, exactly. Yeah, northwestern corner. Anyway, and then we did Golden Swan lots, but that particular time we couldn't get to the Golden Swan, and we went to that restaurant on Francis Street.
It was
we
packed.
Had the stage set up. It was packed.
It was packed. 300 odd, I reckon.
Yeah, it was packed. It was definitely.
So I'm getting so excited hearing these because as a kid, I thrived on watching the demos and seeing them being created and just running around as you guys are doing your thing, always wanting to be a part of it. Because in my eyes, it still is like the greatest thing when they're all put together and you're on stage doing it next and doing the whole demo. What was we're talking about some pretty cool memories. What's one you can come up with now that's like the best memory of doing demos? You know, we talk about the fashion show, done it with the Shaolin monks and stuff. Is any other ones you guys can pull up?
Well, we did a demo in Forest Place, and that actually it was actually a fashion show as well. We were doing the Kung Fu this time rather than the actual modelling. I can't remember what that was for, maybe Fashion Week or something, but we were up there and we did a few demos, but one of them I was playing a bad guy. So it was the lead up to the tile break. So maybe 5 or 6 people versus the bad guy. and then the bad guy kind of wins, which is pretty unusual for a demo, and then everyone breaks the tiles and bad guy loses and show over, which is good. But that one was probably the biggest one that I was, well, at least the biggest crowd that I was performing in front of. So that was full. So Forest Place is pretty big, so I'd be guessing, but it would be a few thousand people, which was kind of the biggest one that I performed in. And also because of one moment where, because CJ Mads and CJ Cassie were part of that demo as well, and there was one bit where they're both hitting me at the same time, and I grab both of them and I pull them together and basically bounce them off each other and ditch them apart. And there's kind of an unwritten rule where you don't hit girls. It never really goes down well with the crowd if the big male is beating up smaller females. So the demos aren't really generally sort of built around that. But in this case it was. And I distinctly remember the sound the crowd made as I bounced these two girls off each other and threw them aside. And they really sold it, to their credit. They did a really good job. You know, they throw themselves back and did the rolls and all sorts of stuff. Absolute professionals. But that noise that the crowd made is stuck in my mind. So, yeah.
So that demo, especially with, if it's the one Ryan I'm thinking about, with the masks, the red and black makeup on the mask.
It was done
Some
like
of them
that.
as well.
Yeah, it's been done like that. I didn't have that at the time, but same one.
That freaked the hell out of me every time that mask came out. Like, even just, I remember the cabinet it lived in as well. Like, even I knew it was there, and even like prior to the demo, like everyone's getting ready, sort of thing. You're packing the cars and stuff. And as soon as the cabinet opened and someone picks up their mask, I bolted. I remember just shutting off. Nah, can't do it. And I remember seeing the demo as well. Like, it freaked me out, but I still watched because I love the demo. And then when the tiles broke and the big bad guy died, I'm like, yeah. I can like remember the smells, the feeling, the atmosphere. Just getting freaked out from that mask.
Yeah, I remember that Forest Chase one, Dicey Hing. I think I did it was either myself one-on-one with Sihing Rory, or there was someone else there, but we were, I think it was Basau and Short Sticks we were fighting with. But yeah, good spot and a big crowd. I do recall that.
What was your highlight sort of memories, Brian, of demos that you've done?
You know what? There's actually so many, because we were getting around doing a lot of performances at the time. There's a couple that come to mind, not for the not for something that I've done that well, and there was a Changhua Association near Stirling. In Stirling, we were big crowd there, and we're on stage, and I don't know if that was a fashion show as well, because I do recall standing to my right. I don't know if it was a CJL, maybe it was CJ Georgia or someone. They had a white style sort of dress on. It was a lovely dress, and we broke tiles, and it was such a big crowd. And the demo before, I didn't break the 5 tiles, so this time I was going to do anything to break these tiles, and I hit them on an angle where I hit with my forearm, the bone of my forearm first as I came down. The tile shattered. One of the broken tiles flew off and hit someone's foot in the front row. So I was pretty proud. And then I looked to my right when I was standing in presentation, and there was red spurted all down the side of this beautiful white dress. And I went, oh my goodness, where did that come from? And then noticed there was a hole in my forearm from the tiles. But I was happy because I broke the tiles. And the other one, I don't know if I think you're definitely much better these days in showing the personality of a lion. I wonder if you could, show the look of a lion's face in shock, because we were doing a Hans Cafe one at Carousel Shopping Centre, and I was the head, and it was a long one, Chinese New Year, and I was absolutely exhausted, and I lost my spatial awareness, and I flung the head around and knocked a bottle of Johnny Walker Red that was sitting on a cradle on the bar of Hans Cafe. This thing's about, $250. And in slow motion, I've opened the mouth of the lion and just watched it fall off the ledge, which was, not a big ledge, and landed on another ledge, and thankfully didn't break. And then I've looked up, and we sort of all looked at each other, the waiters and myself, in both. Wow, did that really happen? And thank God it didn't break, because that would have been horrendous. And then continued on. But I was just, that would have been, oh my God, if that had fallen and shattered on the ground, that would have been a disaster. That wouldn't have been good luck for anyone. But thankfully it didn't. But yeah, I mean, I've got to say, like, when I look back at those times, demo, trainee, training, most of my life was consumed with the school at the time, and that was fantastic. It was all still, every day we create new memories, but back then some fantastic experiences. And talking about demos, Sing Sung, you were, Dicey Hing would remember this too. You were probably the height of my knee, and running around every time, even if I was mopping the floors from trainee, Sing Brian, demo, and wanting to pull out something and play fight, because you obviously just love doing that, especially at that age.
Yeah. I also remember, I don't know whether you got it for me or I got it, and because I think you were a policeman at the time, I got like a policeman's helmet and a baton and maybe handcuffs as well. And I just remember, like, I got to show Sing Brian, and I remember like coming down to class one night and having all this gear and like play fighting with you and stuff. So I remember that.
Sing Brian, Dicing, did you guys have anything to do with the Mortal Kombat launch demo team?
No, that was,
when Sing Brian did.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that was just before me. So I saw those demos, I think, but I wasn't a part of them.
Right, because I'll share this photo.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's seeing Blake Farrow and seeing Brian, Dwayne Bryan.
Yeah,
but,
wow.
That's when we were launching the game, Mortal Kombat 4. And there's
See, you're so small in that photo.
Hey?
You're so small in that
That's
photo,
right.
Stephen.
I'm so small. Yeah, it looks like me, doesn't it? Yeah. So, yeah, there.
Yeah, I remember seeing Blake.
Yeah, seeing Blake. Yeah, that would have been 98.
Oh, okay.
98.
Oh, yeah.
Was that right?
I would have seen the next generation of that. I think I remember seeing it would have been CJ Georgia and CJL doing whatever that demo was, with like what it turned into, and then the Charlie's Angels one. I think that was the first kind of.
Yeah.
I think that movie openings and things like that over the years.
Yeah, we have here in Perth. We did we did Mortal Kombat game. We did Dragon, the Bruce Lee story one. Do you remember that one in Loo? Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. We did that one too. What else did we launch? I don't think we did any of the new Karate Kid ones. We didn't do those.
I presume it was Charlie's Angels was a movie launch as well.
Charlie's Angels wasn't a movie launch, but we borrowed the theming of Charlie's Angels before there was the internet and you couldn't get caught with piracy and stuff like that as easily as you can today. So we borrowed.
I did one for a Jackie Chan movie. It might have been Around the World in 80 Days, maybe. It wasn't all that kung fu, but It was Jackie
Jackie
Chan.
Chan. Yeah.
Mm.
I remember that
Yeah,
because we
that's
got
right.
to watch the movie afterwards as well, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I do remember those. Often I think about the differences, and as you gents are talking about all the events that we had and how many people there were, and fashion shows and big demos and going to Shaolin and competitions and performances and all that sort of stuff. And I think, what is the difference between then and now? Like, there's a lot of our listeners and Jing mowers who used to practice and aren't practicing now, but still follow us and talk about old school. Like, I know today is very different because we're all socially isolated and we can't do face-to-face classes, but even outside of that, what's I'm interested to hear what your opinions are. Like, seeing Brian, you've come and gone as well, so you would get a snapshot, and there's that, how long was it, 7 years that you weren't in training, so you would have remembered what it was like and then come back 7 years later. Dicey Hing, I mean, you were also full-time professional instructor, so you were part of all of that transition that happened back in 2002 when it all started, and changed name and all the rest of it.
Mm.
Yeah, Sifu, I mean, so, I think, what we don't do now that we probably used to spend a lot of time back then on was, we had the pace out bags and we had the dummies, and we had, there was plenty of iron bars and sandbags and things around conditioning, but it was a different sort of mentality at the time compared to what it is now. It was very much a focus on, through the conditioning that is, very hard physical conditioning for the purposes of, you can still execute the techniques effectively now with good level of conditioning, but it was, I think it was a far more, trying to think of the right word, whether it's robust approach to using Kung Fu more in probably a proactive sense than actually trying to find every way possible to avoid using it. I think the mentality that was, across the school, when I reflect back, a lot of the people I used to train with back then, and similar to some of the students now, still had good attitudes and were there for the right reasons and weren't there to get one up on top of the other. It was about learning from each other. There was obviously some personalities that had a different view on it. And when the school changed, I can remember there was a night at the school, Elder Street, where there was a setup of a stage, and you stood up and spoke about the Jing Academy for the first time. And there was, for me, it didn't, that's why I went to Jolimont. It didn't really throw me off. There was, there's people in life generally that are adverse to change and scared about change and what it might, are they going to lose something by not doing what we had done at Elder Street, even in the form of, hitting iron bars with our hands and forearms. For me, I had a different sort of take on it, and I was happy wherever the journey would lead us. And hence, sort of following to Jolimont like Dicey Hing did. So it's, there was a lot of good points, back in Elder Street training days in particular. It was a much bigger, I think, student base at the time. But that doesn't necessarily make it any better. Based on that, I think even with all that was done with all of the shows, etc., it was great. But I think it was appropriate for that time for whatever reason. But I think that the school has matured into a far better space now, and has moved probably with the times.
Mm. Mm. My recollection of it is that although we were very nice, I guess we got something out of being scary, and even our approach to teaching Kung Fu was about there was an element of be feared and revered, so that you can put off a potential fight, which it's very, it is one way of doing it. It's definitely, I do recall teaching and giving instructions to students as to how to behave when you felt like you were being threatened, and much of it was about being as scary as possible, which I think, like you said, it was suitable at the time. It was the way it was meant to be.
Even the just reflecting on the trainee instructor course, and those sort of 3 years that I did at Elder Street. A lot of those classes with trainee, especially for the first couple of years before we really assisted with class, was, and I was laughing, Dicey Hing, when I saw your note on the community page with respect to the warm-ups. I thought that was flashbacks to trainee. I mean, doing push-ups with someone sitting on your shoulders, doing ma work up and back, Dan ma, sel ma with someone sitting on your shoulders, hour and a half classes regularly, just doing toi sao, straight up toi sao with Sifu in the mix. Sometimes hour and a half the entire class on the big pei sao bags, just doing pei sao. Do thousands of pei sao. I mean, there's no doubt back then you were pretty hardened based on that training, the training instructor training. But great, as we talked about even last night, Sifu, with training, there comes that reward with putting in the hard yards, whether it's doing toi sao for an hour and a half, or whether it's executing your hand drill with all the effort you can give it over and over and over and over again until exhaustion, until you can hardly lift your arms. I mean, either way, there's that reward comes from putting in that effort.
No, definitely.
Yeah, I always, like in the intro, I found something with the school that I hadn't found elsewhere in any kind of physical activity. So I was very sports orientated. I was doing sports science at university. Quite coordinated, I didn't have any trouble getting into different things. And then just the struggle with coordinating to do the, day one Jingmo. And I was like, that's what interested me initially. But then the longevity of training Kung Fu, for me at least, is in the other, because you get quite good at it quite quickly when you do it. Like, speaking for us, I guess at the moment, Tim Ryan, when you do that accelerated program of everything, demo, trainee, regular classes all week, you get that physical coordination very quickly. You get the understanding of how to produce techniques very quickly. And then you sit on the bags for half an hour, or you sit in toi sao or bil sao Jhung for an hour and a half, or you do that stuff, and it becomes more about the concept behind it, and all the stuff that comes up during that, and all the spaces you move through during that hour and a half. And so the longevity is understanding all that and questioning all that. And I think maybe the difference, at least for me, if we talk about the academy now and the academy prior, is that you do it another way. You get to that point in another way. So we don't have bags, but you still progress through those spaces in just a different area of training. So, and I guess at this point in my training, having done it for a long time, I can find that in different bits relatively easily, whereas maybe someone in the in a lower belt level or just inexperienced in it, maybe it's harder for them to see that, and there's particular parts of the training that work easier for them to go through those spaces, or maybe it's one or two things. But as you move through, you realise that it's actually all the same thing. POX hours, training POX hours, the same as training pace hours, the same as doing Jiao Bokit Jong, same as doing Biu Sao Jong. Like, it's actually all the same thing. And having this overarching development contextually is kind of where it is for me. Like, that's the really interesting, challenging part of Kung Fu for me now.
No, you're spot on, I think, and I think that's probably on reflecting, for back in Elder Street and early Jolimont compared to now. That's why I probably had some trouble thinking, well, I didn't feel like I've lost anything. When I came back to the school and to Leadable Town Hall and started training again, I didn't feel that, I'm not getting that anymore. I'm not getting this anymore. It's just a different way of doing things. And I mean, if you come up against someone with a good hard hand and you with a Gaochoi Jong, I mean, it doesn't take very long before the memory's back where you're trying to find different ways of avoiding the pain but still get the POC out. So you're still getting that, that degree of conditioning. And I think what's important is, and what Sifu talks about, pain and reflection equals progress, is that, and for the students that are listening to this, whether it's, it's really easy during a toy hour to look at the clock and go, oh, we've been doing this for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, my arms are hurting, I can't, can we get on to something else? Or Gaochoi Jong, my hand's really hurting, can we move on to something else? But if you, as again, I was discussing this on a class last night, if you do that, personally for me, even though that's the easy way out, but I'm cheating myself out of the progress that I could and would get by pushing through that. Because the pain, if the pain on reflection isn't injury, then it's going to be progress. And then you reflect back at some point, you go, that was really good. You get, pretty proud of yourself for pushing through the whatever it is, the pain barrier, and because it's benefited yourself.
I think about often, actually, as I'm practicing, and I think about, reflecting on what is the difference, where do we go from here, what was it all about back then? I mean, none of us have a crystal ball, so we can't actually go back or go forward. We can only just be right here. And one of the things I notice is that I guess it's like a natural, like anything that we do, whatever pursuit that we follow, any craft or just being a person, there is this natural evolution that happens where we just have to go through certain gates to be able to reach the other side. And that it's not right or wrong, it just happens to be the way it is. I know that the way I've approached my own involvement and my own personal training is quite different. So even though there's a dedication and a commitment to practice, my commitment today is very different to what it was back then. And I learned something about, leadership, being in the front and stepping out. And it's like creating a space or a vacuum. If something goes forward really fast, there's a vacuum that's created here that pulls. And one of the things I've noticed that I'm really proud of is that the culture of the academy today, which is different to the cultural when it was called the school, is very different. And the difference primarily from my perspective is that when people come to train now, they train being self-driven, whereas back then people who came to train needed to be told what to do and how to do it. And I think it's a way that we've approached it as instructors. Back then there was so much that was happening, and it was almost like keeping the power within ourselves, so that the students had to almost rely on us to be able to progress forward. Whereas today, we're encouraging students to do a lot of practice, to do it not just to come to class to practice, but practice outside of class. And that becomes more of a self-driven journey, more of an empowered process, rather than I'll wait until my seeing tells me what, or my CJ tells me what to do next. And I think I've noticed the greatest difference in myself, where I set myself a target and I'll continue practicing, regardless of whether it's rain, hail, or shine. I'm doing 24 Yilus a day. I do some condition exercise. I look at some of the Jing technique, and keep doing my own study. And I think that's different. You know, I've rekindled that process. And remember when I went to Hong Kong last May, before the riots started, and I made contact with Hong Kong last week, actually, to start the conversation again, but I can't travel there. So I do want to look into furthering my experience and my knowledge with the root of Jingmo, which is Tonglong. But I'm not going to wait. I don't feel like waiting until the travel bans are lifted is necessarily a good thing. So I've started the conversation. I've suggested Zoom be the process. I mean, we use it quite nicely here. So we'll see what happens.
Great.
You know, there's another part of me and another chapter. I enjoy the learning process, and I enjoy the leading by example process. I think there's something to be said about leadership happens out in the front rather than push from behind, and just allowing people to come along however they wish to, rather than there's an expectation you have to do it like this. It's like, well, this is the way I'm doing it. If you want to come along, come along. For me, it's for me, that seems to be the biggest difference. And you're right, Darsing, there's not the need now to rely on external triggers like Taekwonjongs and Gaotroi machines, and remember the advanced Satsao dummy, which was dummy on wheels.
That's right.
Yeah,
Remember?
That's right.
Yeah, someone on the back pushing it.
Yeah. I mean, they were great. They were great toys and great tools. They were fun. It was great fun. Nothing wrong with them. You know, and it was suitable for the time. Does it mean that it was better or worse? No, I just think it was different. You know, it was absolutely different.
Yeah.
And that's it, really.
Like I say, I don't miss, I was just going to say, I don't miss, you know, every now and again miss hitting on the top of those Satsao dummies, because there's a nice big piece of wood in there, and the seam where that foam cap sits over the top of it, around that edge, if you just let go of that thing a little bit too early and it came up and nailed you right underneath in the wrist, that was quite a sensation.
Yeah.
I remember actually one day, probably a class of, I guess, 20. So everyone lined up in front of those dummies, 5 in each line, just running through for the black belts what they're doing. And I've gone through, so drag it down, drop your gao tray on the back, and I've done exactly what I just said you shouldn't do. And I've let go a little bit early, and it's come up and nailed me right in the wrist, or I've nailed it right with my wrist. And the shock that's gone through my arm, and I've just exhaled, taken a few steps back and gone, ready, and then started to count because I couldn't have any more words in me. I was just fighting back the tears. I tell you what, that was just one of the worst things in the world.
I on the same similar dicey thing with that, but I think it was before or after class. It wasn't where we had line up and run in and belt it, and I did the gao choi, but I didn't let go early. I just gao choied. It was just slack. I just swung the hand. I didn't have the fist clenched tightly, and hairline fractured on the right on that part where the pace out is. And it took a good 6 weeks for that to. I remember going to Sydney for holidays just after it, before I got it properly looked at, and I met an old friend that I hadn't seen for a long time since school in Sydney, and he shook my hand. Literally, he shook my hand, and I dropped to my knees. And he was, what the hell is this? You don't need to bow to me. But anyway, I dropped because the pain was just insane. So I thought, from then on, I thought, right, there's a lesson. Yeah, don't be slack on that gao choi. That hand needs to be clenched tightly as hard as it can.
Yeah. I do miss the throwing boards though. I thought the throwing boards were really good.
Yeah.
You hang a couple of them up at Level. They wouldn't mind, will they?
Well, as long as we can build into the heritage, I don't know what Dicene, you'd probably be able to have more experience in that.
Oh well, let's not worry about it. We'll just use the walls instead.
Okay.
On the concrete pillars, that's old school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the throwing was fun, but being on the receiving end, flat, your back flat against the board with no way to move when there was some decent pay pox coming in, that was could be devastating.
True.
Times.
Well,
so I want to pose.
Yes, go on.
I was going to say I want to pose a conversation point. I guess a lot of people talk about, or at least I hear, how to translate, your martial arts skills in your everyday life sort of thing. And I think a part of me that really loves competing is because I get to hone in all my skills in that one spot, whether it be performing a drill and get judged on that, or even the freeform fighting, which I competed in, honing in my skills for that, 3 2-minute rounds. Or even, just in life, noticing different challenges, physical or non-physical. Is there any point you guys, got so much experience that I really respect? Is there any situations that you can recall, or even what your go-to is when you've reached a point of conflict or anything like that you can share with the listeners?
I've just got to say that there's something about, and it was when I started training, and it's still the same now, there's something about the art or the environment or the combination of both that gives me quite a strong underlying self-confidence, not in the space of arrogance, I hope, because, prior to Jingmo, since the age of, I think, 4 or 5, judo, karate, taekwondo, boxing, hapkido, aikido, everything you can think of, but nothing, I didn't stay at them for long because there was not about hook. There was nothing that I actually felt. I never felt that anything that I was learning was giving me the confidence to look after myself or others. And then I remember, scrolling through the old yellow pages and found the school motto at the time and made a phone call and did a free class, and that was it. But yellow pages. But and that's how I found the school. And from the first training session, and I think the first training session was even just There was a little bit of intro, but a lot of it was just even Dharma, Selma for most of the class up and back. But something grabbed me. And when I stopped training for a while to focus on the family, and I mentioned this in one of my earlier videos when I got back to the school, I went to, funnily enough, to a Reiki session, and the practitioner said to me, we got talking, and it came out that, there was something that was missing. There was something that was affecting my inner strength, my confidence. And when I started back at training, that gap was filled. So for me, whatever it is, that the training gives me that confidence, and I'm sure that helps me in all aspects of my life or in my leadership capacity at work too.
Wow, really nice, Brian. Thanks. Darcy?
I'm trying to say, the question about, how do you use, where do you use Kung Fu comes up a lot. And I found myself I stumbled onto, like I was talking about before, the longevity of, excuse me, the longevity of training for me is in the context of it. It's not necessarily in the physicality of it, although I benefit from that each time. I am still doing it because of the context of it, and that, I guess, following that, it's how it is literally in, or potentially in, everything. So the idea that I train Jingmo on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 o'clock is, I guess, in a way, kind of short-sighted. It's limiting because like we used to make jokes about it as well. Mopping the floor, you do mop sao Jhung. Like it is literally in everything, because we would travel 7 meters. You do a bay. So it's 7 meter width. And the idea is you sit in your ma and you go as long as you can. You can do the full 7 meters and back your way down, toy ma down the hall, and cover the entire bay, or your bay, one way. And and it's stuff like that. It's okay. So where does it fit, as opposed to, this bit of Kung Fu is here, and you do this bit here and this bit over here. It's everything is in everything. It's just, where do you choose to? I'll speak for myself. Where can I see it? Like what is it about this philosophy? Where does it apply here? Because it can, is the short story. It can apply here. It's just, how far do I want to take it? How well do I know it is really kind of where it is as well. So like I would define all the terminology within the philosophy and all the key words, like yellow belt, for example. Awareness is my spirit, attack is the foundation of thought. Then I need to know I need to define awareness for myself. It doesn't necessarily have to be a dictionary response, but I would define the term. So I need to know what attack is, and I need to know what awareness is, and I need to know what I understand spirit to be. And then once I've got those definitions, then I can see it everywhere. Like I can find places where that exists outside of fighting. And in the same way that people talk about university being the way to learn how to learn, as opposed to actually have a degree in something afterwards. It actually teaches you how to learn and how to question. Kung Fu is that. The Jingmo journey for me has always been like that. So what is it? Where does it connect? Like, how do things progress? And the short story, I think, is that it's just about questioning. Like, question everything. Don't judge it. Don't put it into a spot and say this is here. It's just define it and see where it sits, see where it is in everything. It's in mopping the floor. It's in sweeping my front yard. It's in talking to my kids. It's in talking to myself. It's just where where and when. And I think also that the progression through those sort of, the progression through the context in Jingmo is really interesting as well. It's a much bigger conversation than maybe for right now, but practicing in the environment of the physical fighting situation is useful to understand the concepts of it, and then being able to apply that practice, you know, that practice of questioning and that practice of noticing, you know, just in everything else. So, I mean, I hope that's not too kind of up in the air and you can kind of grasp a little bit of that, but, you know, like, where is it in your everyday life? Well, it's everywhere.
Yep.
Yep.
No, I get that. Nothing's up in the air for me. Thanks, Darcy. Dad, do you have anything to share? I know you've shared a lot over the podcast episodes, but maybe something different today or different point of view.
Well, my point of view, mine is that my practice helps me find the courage it takes to be able to make change. And the first step always is to be okay feeling vulnerable. And it's the toughest thing. It is so hard to be okay feeling vulnerable. But when I do, then the answers are revealed. I get to step through difficult spaces and come out the other side. And I think the most difficult thing right now is the situation here, right this moment, where the four of us who've known each other for as long as you've been alive have to do it over the internet. That it's unsafe for us to do it in person. And what I've noticed about the last 4 weeks for me is the difficult feeling of not being able to go to class, having been doing it professionally for 40 years this year, and hadn't been in the environment of always having a gun somewhere to go to and always having student, like, look, there's William playing line dance music now. You can hear him in the background. Can you guys hear him in the background? Can you hear the drum in the background? Oh, it's clear to me. So he's just woken up for his afternoon nap and his line dancing practice. So it's everywhere, right? And it was exactly like that for me as it is for him. There's always Kung Fu around. And right now, it's not around. It's like, it's all virtual, it's online. And that's been really difficult for me. And I notice how I go up and down, being grumpy. I've been like grumpy bear days on end and really hard to live with. And then being okay and then not being okay and then being okay and not being okay. And then wondering, well, what's going to happen? How the hell are we going to go back to face-to-face classes? And how am I going to be able to go back to the comfort of being back to what it was, you know, which is comfortable. And it's like, for me, the practice, and whenever I feel really shitty, I go and practice. At the moment, it's my you lose. I go back to that, and that's when the clarity comes. And it's okay feeling vulnerable. So for me, the practice is actually that.
Yeah, cool. I guess I will share my turn. Yeah, like I was speaking before, I think if I was thinking about a time and place to be, would be for me competing. I like it because there's a sense of I get to perform what I've been practicing, but also I like it because it brings up all these questions and like feelings and stories, and you know, like Brian talking about that self-confidence and Dad talking about that courage. It brings all that out in one spot, and I have to tap into that, or I lose my place, or I get struck somewhere where I don't like it, or whatever it may be. And the most like kind of inner thing that I realized, which I've shared before on the podcast, is that in the past few years, when prior to competing, I get some sort of humanly reaction. Like I get an ulcer on my tongue, or I get a pimple on my nose, or I get sick prior, like 2 days prior to the competition, whether it be a cold or just a runny nose, and like I can feel those symptoms coming on. And I find it so interesting to watch myself in those situations and how to be healthy, how to be clear-minded for the task at hand, even though these kind of distractions are happening to me. Like in my, I guess, most recent competition, 2017, I was at Melbourne with Sing Mitch, and after we finished our first forms competition, we had 2 more to go after that. After the very first one, I had cold symptoms. I had a clammy throat, runny nose. I started sneezing, and then like for the rest of the trip afterwards, I was sick. But it was like, how could that happen right after a competition form? I get sick, and yeah, it's crazy. So I like kind of watching myself and questioning and being the best I can in any moment, sort of thing. But like Darsing says as well, for me, it's every day, everywhere, when I'm trying to apply my skills, you want to call it. So yeah. Well, we're going on an hour now. I respect you guys' time. I'm sure you got other things to do. Should we wrap up the podcast? Do you guys have any kind of final words or things you want to share and talk about before we end?
Happy to do this again.
Yeah,
cool.
That's good.
Yeah, happy to do it again.
Sure, let's do it again, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely.
I'll find more photos now that you've actually named quite a few events. It's given me somewhere to go, so I'll head into our archives and see what I can find for the follow-up podcast. We actually have some photos and some video.
I might have some sneaky China trip photos. So
Yeah.
I've got some. I'll send through too.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, cool. Actually, just figure out on Zoom, it's easy to share. You just pull it up on your desktop and through your apps and share the screen.
Okay.
All right, cool. Well, let's do this again. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of the podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you. Thanks, gents.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.